トビデオ
So remember all the way back last year when I talked about Cypher the video? Yeah, good times. For those of you who need a refresher, Cypher the video was a 40-minute OVA based off of the popular shoujo manga Cypher. The manga is a love letter to 80s American culture and music, with a plot centered around American high school student Anais Murphy's involvement with a beautiful twin pair of actors/models, Siva and Cypher. The manga had a very character-focused narrative with themes of codependent relationships, childhood trauma, and even heroin addiction, which is crazy to see explored in a Japanese manga for teenage girls of all places. Also twincest. Cypher was so popular that an OVA adaptation was done by the illustrious studio Magic Bus. But instead of trying to do a straightforward adaptation of the manga's story, they instead went for a more music video style of direction, utilizing intricately edited musical montages of events that happen in the story, interviews with the characters playing themselves, and whatever the hell this is.
Superbound Bailey's Cake Mix.
Super good.
And all of this is set to a licensed music soundtrack, bookended by a legally distinct cover of Phil Collins's Against All Odds. Emphasis on legally distinct.
And there's nothing left here to remind me.
So it's really unsurprising that Cypher the video has become sort of a cult retro anime hit these days. It is such a unique product in how it is trying to be more of a commercial for the manga it comes from rather than its own product. But because it's done up in all the retrocore stylings of 80s nostalgia that old school anime nuts and aesthetic freaks go gaga over, it has surprising staying power in this day and age. It's a truly one-of-a-kind product of the 80s OVA era, and that's what makes it so special. That's the line of thinking I had up until a couple of weeks ago. Though I might consider myself an expert on anime history, I am not immune to a few blind spots. This possum can be a basic bitch like that. So what if I were to tell you that the format Cypher the video was done up in is not unique? What if I were to tell you that there was another anime OVA that did the music video montage conceit in lieu of a straightforward adaptation, and that it actually came out before Cypher the video? And what if I were to tell you that the anime was also an adaptation of a super successful hyper melodramatic shoujo manga? Rinko Ozaki is an ordinary high school student whose only signifying feature is that she has a faint birthmark on her lower left arm that gets darker with each passing day. One day, after accidentally cutting herself with a kitchen knife, she finds out that her own blood tastes delicious. She tries to go about the rest of her day, attending school and meeting up with her delinquent childhood friend, Shinya Mizushima, but an unexpected event throws the old life she once knew right out the window. A group of rival delinquents decide to kidnap Rinko and have fun with her as a means to get revenge by proxy on Shinya. But once they got her cornered, Rinko's fear and anger manifest into her transforming into a vicious leopard with purple eyes who slaughters her attackers without mercy. Shinya discovers this, and the two of them soon find out that Rinko is of a special breed of human who can transform into a ferocious carnivorous beast when provoked. And before the two romantically involved friends can even try to keep this a secret, it turns out that Rinko's biology teacher, Miss Sonehara, has a special interest in Rinko and her new development, and will do anything to ensure that she becomes her latest lab rat, cat. So from there, Rinko and Shinya end up having to be on the run from Sonehara and any other person who wishes to use Rinko's new powers for their own purposes, and boy is this opening going on for a long time. When exactly are we going to get to the anime proper? Well, you're looking at it. This collage of still frames and fancy schmancy video toaster editing effects is the anime version of Purple Eyes in the Dark. It is the anime equivalent of this.
When do we get to the ride?
This is the ride!
It's funny to say that Cypher the Video, against all odds, might be more faithful in its adaptation of its source material. Hey, at least they animated scenes that were in the manga for their montages. This is just slow panning across insert art and having it play against some rock and power pop. If it weren't for these hard-coded subtitles in this video, you would probably think I made Purple Eyes in the Dark myself in Premiere just to screw with the unwashed masses. But no, this was a real deal thing that was sold in stores, and it's frankly unbelievable. Why would an anime with almost zero animation exist? Can it even be called an anime at that point? What is the point of its very existence? These, of course, are all very good questions, and the reason why Purple Eyes in the Dark is so fascinating given its overall style. The cat doesn't have her tongue tonight. This is Purple Eyes in the Dark. The manga from which this anime/slideshow is based off of comes to us from Chie Shinohara. Shinohara was a female mangaka that came of age in the 70s, which was a very important decade for shoujo manga. During that time, that category of comics was going through a massive shift in demographic. Instead of being stories aimed at children, they were shifting to being stories aimed at teenage girls and girls in their 20s. This was due to the rise of the Year 24 group, a generation of female mangaka that is credited for introducing more narratively complex stories to shoujo. They helped broaden the scope of what could be done with shoujo manga and reflected the attitudes of the sexual revolution and women's liberation movement with their innovations in storytelling. One of these mangaka was Keiko Takamiya. Takamiya was best known for her manga Kazeto Ki no Uta, or The Song of Wind and Trees. Following the tragic romance between two boys at an all-male boarding school in 19th century France, The Song of Wind and Trees embodied the narrative ideals spearheaded by the Year 24 group, and also aroused controversy for its frank depictions of incest, bondage, and rape, which in turn earned it quite the fanbase. One of those fans was Chie Shinohara herself. She wanted to break into manga in hopes that she could make a work that could match The Song of Wind and Trees in quality. After getting a lucky break with one of her manuscripts being published in the shoujo manga Coronet in 1981, Shinohara was able to nab her first real hit 3 years later with her true debut manga series, Purple Eyes in the Dark. I've already explained the plot at large, but going into more detail, you can really tell that Shinohara was influenced by the Year 24 group with how she emulates their styles, utilizing wispy impressionistic character designs, minimalist backdrops, and overlapping paneling. It's like it's not only trying to tell you a story, but also delve into a character's emotional state at the same time. An excellent choice in comic direction considering just how many dark places this story will go. The first volume ends with Rinko's little sister being mauled to death by attack dogs, all just so Sonehara could see if one of them would transform into a cat. And it doesn't even stop going into some morally gray areas in terms of heroes and villains. Sonehara is a mad scientist who will stop at nothing to research Rinko and others of her ilk, up to including murder, but her motivations do elicit a slight bit of sympathy when you know that she's just trying to prove that her father, who made the discovery of cat people in the first place, was not crazy. And later on in the story, Rinko ends up having to form an alliance with another cat person named Oragiri. The only problem is that he clearly sees her as an object that he and only he should possess, which leads to a scene where he drugs and date rapes her. The overall story is a dramatic thriller of shifting alliances, heavy themes, and shocking plot twists, one of which just might be one of the ballsiest moves a writer could have made in what is essentially her first big break of a manga. And no matter how dark the story gets, Shinohara's art just makes the events feel strangely beautiful without sacrificing their dramatic intensity. Purple Eyes in the Dark was a breakout hit when it ran in Shokami from 1984 to 1986. It would eventually spawn a light novel adaptation in the early 90s written by Shinohara herself, and a live-action miniseries released in 1996, and how appropriate that I can only find screen grabs of the show and not actual video. Speaking of, so why is the Purple Eyes in the Dark OVA all of this?
Go ahead and tell her. Try to act like a man. Try to be human.
Well, there's no real exact history on how this anime got made, and even if there was, I doubt it has been translated to English. But from what I can speculate, this appears to have been a video product that came out through some unique circumstances. One of the first bits of adaptation that came out of Purple Eyes in the Dark's success was not an anime, but an album. In 1985, music label Toshiba EMI released an album with songs themed around the manga. This was noteworthy in that while soundtracks and image albums being released for anime were incredibly commonplace, it was somewhat rare for these to be released for a manga. Not unheard of, but still rare, particularly an ongoing one. It was composed and arranged by producer/trumpeter Ichiro Nita, who was also doing work for soundtracks to anime such as Dalos and Area 88. Lyrics were provided by LA-based songwriter Linda Henrik. She only had recently started songwriting at that time, but was slowly becoming prolific thanks to her work writing themes and image songs for anime like Dirty Pair and City Hunter. She would later write the lyrics that would be adapted to the Mother soundtrack album and make thousands of Japanese kids cry with this commercial.
Take a melody, simple as can be, giving some words and the sweet harmony.
Vocals were provided by two people, female vocals by Yoshiko Yamagiwa and male vocals provided by Dari Jackson, both of whom were collaborators of Nita and have provided vocals for the songs in Area 88. Okay, I know I have been talking more about the manga and the soundtrack than the anime since you see what I gotta work with, but this is all important to take in because it was the soundtrack that got the anime rolling in the first place. Toshiba EMI had just opened up an anime studio division that would later be known as Umix, the studio best known for OVA productions like Riding Bean and AD Police Files. Directing Purple Eyes in the Dark would be Mizuho Noshikubo, who had recently come off of directing the ambitious music video style OVA California Crisis. So if the music video style concept was intended from the beginning, they did get the right man for the job. But really though, I bet you are thinking, why should I waste time with this? This literally is just a bunch of Shinohara's cover art being slid around the screen for half an hour. What value could this possibly have as a work of art? Well, would it surprise you to know that this actually adapts the source material? For 30 minutes, the Purple Eyes in the Dark OVA is telling its source material story through its still images. Not just through Shinohara's art, but also through some well-placed manga panels. And there is in fact some animation in this. And I think they do a good job in conveying the mood and atmosphere of the story through the music and visuals. They have to be, considering just how on the nose the lyrics can sometimes be. It's also never boring visually. Thanks to the editing and the use of some clever effects animation, Purple Eyes in the Dark almost achieves this hypnotic feel. It makes you focus on the sound and visuals of what's happening on screen and puts you in this city pop trance. But what I think is the most devious clever bit that comes out of Purple Eyes in the Dark is that it draws you into telling the story while omitting all the details. The story this image album of an anime is telling is the ultimate Cliff Notes version of itself. You can kind of grasp what's happening, but you also feel like you are missing the key details of what makes the images that are happening on screen mesh together. And if you want to find that out, you have to go out and buy the manga. Because that's what this anime really is. A commercial for the manga. A half-hour one with gorgeous visuals, but a commercial nevertheless. And it only really works as a commercial. If you had actually read the manga before you watched this, you really only find that it captures the feel of the manga halfway. It's no lie, Purple Eyes in the Dark can be a real downer of a manga sometimes, and when half the soundtrack to this anime is city pop jams, there's some dissonance to be had. You know the scene where Rinko attempts suicide after being roofied and date raped by the only person who could relate to her problem, and her last thoughts before slipping into unconsciousness was praying that her attempt worked? What if it was soundtracked by Miami Sound Machine? But we're ignoring the real question here, which is why make an anime like it was a Naru-Sauce tribute in Windows Movie Maker over actually making an anime the old-fashioned way with actual animation? So from parsing what little info I could find, there is some talk that this might have actually started off as a straightforward OVA in production. But for whatever reason, either production issues or reallocation of budget, the Purple Eyes in the Dark OVA just turned into this. We really don't know, and in the interest of me not wanting to point any fingers at EMI, Yomex, or Toei, the distributors, maybe it was just something that was out of their hands and this was the best they could do on such short notice. On the other hand, Cypher the Video does roughly the same thing of using music video montages as a clever way to disguise that this OVA is more of an ad to encourage you to buy the manga rather than a plain old anime, and considering that both Purple Eyes and Cypher were popular shoujo titles aimed at girls and young women, the conspiratorial cynic in me can't help but stir. Despite its popularity, shoujo manga has historically struggled to gain a foothold in anime compared to more boy-focused titles, and that is especially true in the 80s. Most of the successful girls anime of that time period were stuff obviously marketed to really young girls. More mature shoujo rarely got onto TV thanks to content restrictions, and if they did sought refuge in the OVA market, the budget and marketing push was not always available compared to more male-focused titles. Remember, Banana Fish was the absolute biggest a shoujo title could be in those days, and it only got an anime adaptation in 2018. So unless you were a prestige shoujo title like They Were 11, your chances of getting a big budget adaptation were slim to none. So it could have been in the realm of possibility that one of the higher ups thought it was not worth the extra time and money to give Purple Eyes in the Dark an actual anime adaptation. They probably saw the video consuming public as mostly male, so they figured that it would have been more financially viable to cut this extended ad for the manga that you paid for in the video store. That way, they wouldn't have wasted money on an audience that they figured wasn't there, and get more people to go purchase the manga and soundtrack since that's where the more reliable money was. But still, that's just a theory / crazy rambling on my part. There's just as much evidence to support that as there is to support the theory that the image set music video was all part of the plan. In fact, there is one piece of evidence that leans towards the latter. Right after the credits roll, we see a personal message from Chie Shinohara herself, thanking all of her fans of her work for enjoying Purple Eyes in the Dark. The OVA came out just a year shy after Purple Eyes wrapped, so this OVA might not just be an ad for the manga, but also a send-off. It's a victory lap for the manga, looking back on the dramatic plot points that made it so memorable while dazzling us with Shinohara's gorgeous artwork. If anything, that possibility keeps this from being the cheap, cynical cash grab that it might have been. Now, would I recommend the Purple Eyes in the Dark pseudo-anime? Well, if you really want a nice shoujo-style screensaver set to City Pop, then I guess you can't go wrong here. But if you actually want to sink your teeth into something more narratively rewarding, then the manga is the place to go. Even though there's no official release just yet, scanlations are widely available if you know where to look. In the end, the OVA of Purple Eyes in the Dark can only really exist as a novelty, but it can take solace in the fact that it's a very pretty novelty.
Okay, that's it. No more kitty litter for you. You'll just have to do it somewhere else.